Hi everyone, it's Ian Fox here from Guest Safety Officer Lobby Group, and I'm joined as ever by our man on the ground, the bloke who actually does this stuff for a living, Gary Twining, right, who does a great job. Anyway, Gary, I was asked during the week, Ian, can you give me some advice onto where I should go to get training? And I said, well, you know, I used to train myself, but I don't do it anymore. I think this is a real problem, don't you, Gary? The fact that what kind of trainers should I send him to?
Well, first of all, Ian, hello. Nice to see you.
Hello, Gary.
I see you forgot about me once again, Ian. I'm like the sidekick.
Always, mate. Don't worry about it. It's part of the show.
I get it. Right. To answer your question, what kind of trainer should you send to? Well, you used to be a trainer. So have you ever done any door work? Have you ever been operational, Ian?
What? Worked on a door?
Yeah, any sort of security work. Security work, been out there operational.
Oh, I've done loads, done security work, Gary, but if you're asking me if I've ever been on a door, are you asking me if I've been out there in the cold, the snow, from the start of a shift to the very end, facing punters that are, crazed, alcohol crazed?
Yeah.
No, you're mad. Of course I haven't. But I taught it for many years, and I think don't you think that's one of the ironies?
But the dark thing about it is how can you have people teaching if they've never experienced it? I mean, I do believe it used to be a case of you had to do 2 years minimum experience as a door supervisor to teach the course, and as you say, that got thrown out the window. And people like yourself, no disrespect to you.
Oh, you should have. Be disrespectful. That's
no, I'll be disrespectful for you. How can you really teach a cohort or students about the realities of what actually goes down from an event, from a door, from a pub, from a club, from working in a retail unit, from even working in a hostile unit? I mean, I know policemen, they've got given policemen these jobs, they've given ex-soldiers these jobs. Two completely different environments. And yourself, I mean, you used to be a DJ at one point, wasn't you?
Yeah, certainly did.
So again, it's a complete separate as compared to standing there doing your 5, 6, 12-hour shift, great in the summer, horrible in the winter, but having that experience and working all the way through.
Well, I just refer to the sort of thing that the thing that actually made me and led me to become a trainer was the time that I spent from 1996 onwards working in clubs as a DJ. As I used to say to the boys and girls on the door at that time, when they asked me if I was ever interested in joining their ranks, I told them that I was a lover, not a fighter. And as you can see from my looks, it's proven to be the case. So the reality is, when I was there working and mixing with the guys and girls I couldn't believe it. The stuff that they had to cope with, the stuff that they had to deal with, etc., etc., and increasingly seeing them. How can I? It's just difficult, because unless you've actually been there, seen it, and done it, you cannot understand the pressures that they are under. In the course of that period.
Absolutely.
And just to sort of finish off on that, Gary. That was so important for me going forward, and what I was able to draw upon was several years of experience of working in the nighttime economy within the door supervisors and seeing door supervisors at work touching the surfaces of it on the outside when you have to call for help, etc., and occasionally having to be involved in order to stop punters messing around with your records. It was frightening at times, Gary. So, you know, hats off to the boys and girls out there who do a great job.
Absolutely, absolutely. But the training has changed, as we're aware. I mean, your colleague who spoke to you, where would you send someone, you know, who's got these skills? I mean, if it was me sending someone, I like to find out who the instructors are. I mean, if they came to me, I've got 37 years experience. I can blind them with science. I can give them stories every day of the week.
Yeah.
You know, I could give more about my life story than we could about the course. But, you know, it's finding that right instructor out there. You know, not someone just suddenly got the qualification. Someone's been working for 10 minutes, or they've been on the doors for 6 months. They've been an ex-policeman. It's all a different ball game. It's finding these right people and these right trainers out there, which is very hard and difficult.
You'll be interested to know that another conversation that I had with someone who works at a fairly senior level in the awarding organisations. You know, they told me that you know, in reality, about 70 to 75% of people that are training in security, doors in particular, you know, you shouldn't be training anything.
Exactly right. And over the years, I've been in and out of places, and I've worked for different companies and pieces, and I've met other trainers. And, you know, some of the stuff they've come out with, I mean, I've even been on a training course, so I won't mention the company, but one of their top instructors, who I, you know, we won't say much about, but he was telling people that still toe caps, boots, are an offensive weapon, and telling students that. And this is when things start getting out of play, when you've got inexperienced people with poor knowledge passing on poor information, which then goes down the line, filters down to the rank and file, and the guys on the ground, the guys and girls on the ground, they believe what they're being told by these people who've got no operational experience.
Well, you're going to, aren't you? If you're, you know, if you've never been in the industry before, and it's like anything where you've never been you've never been involved before, you know, the first person you meet is effectively your mother duck, aren't they? You
That's
know,
right.
You're going to waddle behind them and whatever they say, because clearly you believe as a you know, a fresh face recruit, you believe every single thing that they tell you, because otherwise, surely nobody would have put them there or given them the job. But guess what, folks? They will.
That's right, and they do. And this is what the issue is, Ian. You know, we're churning out, it's a factory, we're just churning out people who are not capable of doing the job, being taught by people who are not capable of doing the job. And this is why people on the ground are suffering. This is why the industry is suffering. It's not taken seriously from the moment they step through that door to the time that they leave, and they're being trained by the wrong kind of person. And this is what happens. And then when they become operational, we've got a massive gap now.
Yeah, it's true. There is a massive gap, and there are a number of reasons for it. I'm sort of going to be a little bit controversial now, Gary, because I know anybody who knows me knows that they would say that I normally have a bee in my bonnet for the SIA and various bits and pieces. But I do want to say that people don't understand or fully appreciate the role of the SIA within the security industry. They are the regulator. They are not your union. It is not their job to tell you who you should train with, where you should go for training, whether or not somebody's a good trainer, whether or not an awarding organisation is capable of producing, you know, the right kind of environment for trainers to live. And so when I hear people criticise the SIA in some respects, and don't get me wrong, hopefully we'll come on to the other bits a little bit later where they do have some control. I do think it's a little lazy for people to say, oh, it's the SIA. I'm not getting paid enough because it's the SIA. It's not in some circumstances. I think we have to be careful.
I have to agree with her. The SIA is a regulating body and their job is to regulate. And I agree with her. They're not there to judge wages, even though they've got involved with the HMRC and what have you, and bits and pieces. But you're right, they are a regulator, and they're there to regulate the license and make sure that it's the right person, in theory, to do the job.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. I think that yes, but I'd also agree there are some aspects of the issue of their role that I don't think they do well, and certainly I think one of the biggest bugbears I hear most about is enforcement. The enforcement role, in the sense that it's supposed to be a level playing field. That is what the SIA is supposed to be. We all were led to believe would occur, and it doesn't exist now because some people play and game the system, but that will always be the case.
Absolutely.
Shall we just nip back,
Yeah,
nip back to reality and get back to, our friend who's asked for guidance, so he could wind up, or she could wind up with somebody who basically has got no idea and no practical experience of the industry. And all they've got, these people, is they've got the old they've got the BTEC or whatever it is, adult trainer 7303, whatever it is now, adult education. And lo and behold, they're now there, having done their door course effectively a week ago, and now they're considered capable of training individuals. And they do, as they get their little PowerPoint package out, which they purchased, and then spend the next 6 days boring the ass off everyone.
Well, I know someone. I can't actually again say I can't mention this, but someone quite recently who's got involved in the security industry was the BTP, British Transport Police, for something like 28 years. Jumped ship there, got his door supervisor course. He's now lecturing, and now he feels he's in a position to start generating and commenting on the actual security industry. And he's got no security background at all, apart from he works in the police service or the British Transport Police, which is, again, it's a massive difference. The security industry and the police services are completely different. As you know, the police services is funded, they've got backing, they've got power behind them. In the security industry, we've got a regulator who tries to regulate. We've got training companies doing their madness. We've got the audio organisations having their 10 pence worth in. And then we've got everyone in the companies and bits and pieces. We've got their own policies and their own procedures, and see how they perceive stuff.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. I mean, but this is again where I start to, if we sort of follow the pyramid. I mean, you look at, and the thing I always think is good to look at in these cases is the money.
Absolutely,
is the money. So who benefits from these or allowing these trainers to operate? Because they must, they are required, aren't they? Have you been through the process of becoming a centre?
Absolutely, and to answer your question, who benefits? It's the awarding organisations, isn't it? At the end of the day, they're the people. Or the awarding organisations? Well, it is, yeah, and they're the ones who are making the money. They're the ones who are throwing the certificates out. They're the ones charging for it. I believe it's I don't know what it's worth now. I mean, I think or maybe it was you I was chatting to the other day about the figures of something that's like £1 million, £1 million a year, or 1.5 million a year. Certificate done.
It's a considerable amount. Door supervisors alone, I think, had something like 40, about 40,000 people a quarter go through. Yeah, so there's 40,000 people a quarter. Door supervisors alone.
Yeah.
And if you take an average of the price of a certification, so, you know, £30, you're looking at £1 million industry. You're looking at an industry that's worth millions of pounds to the awarding organisations, and there are only 6 awarding organisations that are licensed or by the SIA to deliver their program. So it's big money, big money. Would you have it? Would you have like you know, £1 million if?
Oh, of course, it wouldn't. Every quarter, if you've got that amount of people, I mean, as you said, 30 to 40,000 people going through that time and that certification, it is big money. And you're rewarding organisations, they're sitting there rubbing their hands because it's an easy income for them, isn't it? It's a constant turnover.
Well, yeah, you can go round, and it's one where there is very little by way of responsibility that falls on the actual awarding organisation, because OFQual, who are technically the bosses of the awarding organisation, are about as much use as a chocolate fire guard. They aren't going to do anything because their primary concern is the learner, which is as it should be. So where even if we do find anything wrong, it's very rare that anything will happen because it disadvantages the learner. You know, so if you behave badly, Gary, or I did, then it wouldn't be my learners that suffered. By and large, it would be the who is it? It'd be the learners. And to think that OFQual, I think in the past few years, I'm not sure, I can't be certain, but I think there's only been one prosecution the entire time of an awarding organisation.
But again, this goes down to, you know, it's become a money-making industry. It's a turnover. It's a turnover. Yeah, there has been centres closed down. There's a piece. We don't know that because they are, you know, our regulator does go.
Yeah, it does, definitely.
But you know, at the end of the day, you just said there's only one prosecution. It's very easy to shut centres down, and what happens is, you know, that person might not get a license to open up again, but they get someone else to take the place, and it opens up again.
Yeah.
And the awarding body goes, well, fair enough, we've got someone else in there now, blah, 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 and it churns, and it keeps churning, and we churn out more and more rubbish.
Yeah, it's the old adage, isn't it? Lessons have been learned. This must never happen again.
There you go.
Oh, we won't even, but it's people's lives, isn't it? That are at stake. When you become a trainer, I think one of the things that you don't realize when you first get in is because you look at it and think, oh, it's compliance. All I am teaching people is compliance.
Yes.
Yeah. And all I am doing, hence the PowerPoints, is I am content dumping. Yeah. I'm giving you a big glut of information that no human being, you know, ordinary human being can take in. Certainly not the level that we're supposed to be teaching to in the amount of time that we're given. You know, did you know, how do you find when you've delivered the SIA courses, what did you find the biggest difficulties were?
The biggest difficulties for me is you've got 5 days, and the 6th day they take their exam. So it used to be 3 days, remember, but then they increased it to 5 days. The 5 days didn't ever worry me. I know a lot of trainers were, oh, it's 5 days now, blah, blah, blah. To me, the 5 days is worth it, but the 5 days is still not enough to actually go through and teach what they need to be taught and explain what needs to be taught. At the end of that, I know trainers who used to get exam sheets before it, and they've trained people to pass the exam.
Yeah.
Now, I've got no real issue with that, because we should be training people to pass the exam, but they're coming into an industry which the regulator wanted to make it professional. We want it to be a professional industry. So what my idea is, 5 days was never enough to teach the security industry. You're not a policeman within 7 days. I remember someone from the SA saying to me, well, once you've done that, you get a license to practice security. And I will never forget those words. Their words were, yes, once you've passed, you get a license to practice security. And if this is what the regulator or someone from the regulator is actually throwing out, we practice security. I'm a professional security officer or operative. My colleagues are professionals. We don't practice security. The police service don't practice policing. The army doesn't practice soldiering. Nurses don't practice at being a nurse. So why are we using the term practice?
Yeah, it's a great point, Gary.
We're not practicing. We're meant to be out there on the ground, and this is where we're failing as operation on the ground. We're failing because the training isn't up to scratch. It's not being regulated properly. It's not being looked at, and people are being, as you say, dumped full of information, content dumped, boom, boom, boom. By the time they've left that week or what have you, they've done, it's gone. It's gone.
There's a couple of people. There's a guy called Nick Shackleton Jones who's just written a book, which I got, How People Learn, and in it he quotes, he shows that there's evidence that has been, and not just a few years old, but 100-odd years old. A guy called Ebbinghaus introduced what's known as the learning curve. And the amount of knowledge that you can absorb and retain over that, over a 9-hour period, and then times that by 5 or 6, and retain is ridiculous. It's actually very, very small. So yes, people that are intelligent, and I don't mean it to sound patronizing. If you've got, if you're an intelligent guy, university, blah blah blah, you can probably do it. But for the target audience, which is level 2, and let's not forget that many of the people that are taking it, some of them can't even speak English.
Well, that's a thing for another day.
Yeah, I know, but it is a fact, and it is actually part of the mandatory training requirements now. Is an English confirmation test. But anyway, if you can't understand it, can't retain it, etc., how are you then going to go out into the real world and be safe? And more importantly, protect the guests who are coming into your venue.
That's the thing, Ian. You've just said it. How are you going to protect them? And if you haven't got the understanding, you're not going to protect them. You're not going to look after yourself. You're certainly not going to look after the guests who arrived or anywhere you go. And we see this countless upon countless times. And what happens is it breeds discontent within the industry, or they rock up at some place, or at the moment we know there's a huge shortfall in industry. So there's lots of bedroom companies, they're throwing these guys out and girls who've got limited knowledge, limited English, which how did they pass the exam? I question that, because I see it now every day. You can see it, you go anywhere, you'll find that. And if they can't understand, and they don't understand the culture, and they don't understand people, as you said, how are they going to protect anybody? They're not protecting anybody, because they're there, they come to get the job. I don't want to go. That's all I want to do. Come and go. And that's what the industry is becoming. It's becoming people who are complacent and they don't care what they really do. There is a good few people out there who do care, for myself, you, my colleagues. There's a lot of people do, but the
I think the
majority.
majority. I think no. I think the yeah. I'm going to take a little bit of issue there with it. I think the vast majority of people do care about what goes on, but I think what we always have to remember, and it's always difficult when you're in the bubble, isn't it? In the you know, when you're working or operating within the bubble, there are the vast majority of people out there are good people who would do anything for you, who will stand there, save your life, you know, rescue you. They'll do absolutely everything they have. But there are always going to be a few people out there that aren't going to play by the rules. They are going to take advantage of their situation, any power, etc., that may give them. And it's the bad apples that destroy us and destroy the industry and make us get that, as we spoke about in the previous episode, you know, we get called bouncers, thugs, etc., etc.
And this goes back to the trainers. This all leads back to the trainers. If you've got a non-operational trainer, someone who's not even been out on the ground, someone doesn't understand, you're giving them, you're just giving them content. You know, anyone can stand there and do that. Anybody.
Yeah, you can. You know, and if you, but the other thing that makes it worse is that you not only is it possible, but the vast majority of these people, they get work on two, you know, on a couple of ways. Either A, they know people, you know, within the industry who put stuff their way. They also guarantee a pass. You know, one of the things that's always made me laugh is how on earth can you guarantee anybody a pass in anything in life? You know, I don't get it. 100% pass guaranteed. Who can say that? And for it to be true.
I don't know who's saying that, but you can't turn around that, because at the end of the day, it's a multiple choice questions, and the only way you can do that. And again, as I said, I've known instructors in the past, they've previously had the exam sheets before the before the exams, and they literally go through the PowerPoint and they give it this line of, I'm going to highlight this point here, which you need to know. Make sure you make a note of this, and that will be their whole day. Literally answering questions A to B, and they've just given you the answers.
Essentially,
Is that really the way to be doing it?
No, well, it gets people, because if you there's two points on this. There's, if you're an instructor, I remember when I first started, Gary, believe it or not, you know, I actually used to be quite honest, and I used to teach everybody properly. I used to go into quite a bit of depth, and people failed. Yeah. So they could come to Ian and they'd have a chance, you know, a chance of failing. If they went to someone else, they passed, you know, in a day, sometimes less. You know, I know instructors, and I reported them to the SIA and to the respective awarding organizations. Nothing happened. Nothing happened at all. You know, all I got from when I said, well, what's happening, was because I knew they were still doing it, is that, oh yeah, Ian, we can't do anything yet. We've got to look at it, you know, through the legal prism. Not the prison, but they should have been in prison, but prism, you know, lens, and because it's all got to be done above board. Well, that was fine, but I, as a trainer, was struggling to make a living when I shouldn't have been. I was being undercut by people that had absolutely no intention. That, you know, you can say, Ian, you didn't know anything about the industry, and about being a door supervisor, and I'll hold my hands up to that. But what I will say is, is I certainly didn't just walk in the room and give them the answers like I know certain people did.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? And I've been there, I've witnessed that myself. I've seen it being done, and I've walked away from organisations because of that, because it doesn't sit right with my core values. And at the end of the day, it's not a hard course. It isn't a hard course. There's a lot, as you say, there's a lot of information dumping, and it's a multiple choice questions. The questions could be made a little bit more simple for people rather than trying to catch people out. Because I don't know, all sort of organisations trying to throw these weird questions in to try and catch you out. But at the end of the day, if it's done correctly and the questions are put correctly, you would have a better officer, a better person on the ground, and the people will understand. And then again, the next stage when we're looking at this training is, the SIA training is minimum standard.
Yeah, says everything, doesn't it? Minimum. The word minimum.
Minimum standard, and that's the problem. Minimum standard, and so many people who buy into that standard. I'm SIA trained. We've said this before. I'm SIA standard trained. Nothing to be proud of. It's nothing to be proud of, because when the regulator's saying we give you a license to practice and you're working at minimal standards, you've got a minimal person doing the job.
But the other thing about this, and I just want to just say that what's really important here is, yes, you train to the minimal standards. These minimal standards will, they adopt a scattergun approach and cover a whole range of topics. However, as was shown in the Manchester Arena inquiry, when you get in a court of law, these minimum standards are used against you. Well, you were trained to do this. You had training in X. You've done such and such, as though I did first aid, but now, according to the lawyer or the barrister in front of me, that effectively made me a trauma surgeon. Yeah. And you get treated and approached in that way. So yes, it's the minimum standard, but where do you go from there?
Well, where do you go? I mean, as you said, your colleague asked who will be the better trainer. Where do you go? How do you find these trainers? They are out there, but it's asking the right questions, like we do. We ask questions. What's the experience of the trainer? What's the trainer's profile? How long have they been doing it? It's not about their pass rate. Who are they? Are they going to be trained correctly? Are they beginning with the right information? At the end of the day, we can't change the training program, because that's what they've done. This is what's been agreed. The regulator's happy with it. That's what it is. But to get the right knowledge for the right people, it's about putting the right people on the ground. I always say the right people on the ground, the right people teaching, and you're starting to close the gaps. But at the moment, the gaps are still open.
Do you not think? And I know, because it sounds silly from where I started at the beginning, but funnily enough, the SIA helped me become. I was appointed as a result of a recommendation from the SIA to OFQual. I became a subject matter expert in security, especially with regards the doors and so I actually got to do quite a bit, and I wrote a report on it, which the SIA and OFQual obviously got. But what that was looking at was what the questions were and how they rated. Now, obviously, I can't say what the results were, but it was interesting. One of the awarding organisations that I did had a 95% pass rate, and the other one had an 85% pass rate. Which one do you think had the most business?
Yeah, the one with 95%, obviously.
Yeah, And the questions, as you ask them, as you suggested, they're actually they're done relatively scientifically in the way that they're put forward. And I could go into the technical side of it, but I won't at this particular juncture. And I have written questions for awarding organisations as well. So where you try and get to the nitty gritty. But, and this comes back to what you were saying, it is compliance, it is a minimum standard, it is a tick box event. Training at the SIA license to practice is effectively a tick box event where content dumping is the norm. So should it not shift? Where do we shift it? Do we shift it the responsibility to say, right, Gary, you've been content dumped to the point where you've just woken up and are ready to go out and actually work? Is it your responsibility? Is it the awarding organisation's responsibility, or does any of it rest with with anyone else?
My answer to your question there is, we have a regulator.
Yeah.
And a regulator should be the ones regulating this, and they should be doing it properly and in-depthly, rather than just to say, that's it, we move on. I've always said security course should be a minimum of 2 weeks. And someone replied back to me, that's too long for anyone to do. But if you go and do the CP course, that's 2 weeks. If you do the FPOS or the FREC 3 on top of that, that's another week. So you can end up being away for 3 weeks doing that, just on that alone. So why is the security course or the DS course 5 days? It used to be 3 days, 5 days.
You see, I would, I can't believe I'm going to argue with you. Me and you are supposed to be on the same team.
Maybe you are.
In actual fact, if you're only content dumping, then in reality, why can't you just do it all online? Because it's content it's content dumping. I'm just going to teach so you can sit there reading it on a thing. You do not need to be in a classroom for that length of time doing basically stuff that you could do on your computer at home with no cost to you or the ability to reduce the cost. Surely, this is just my view, is the time that you need to spend in a classroom. So instead of when you're doing your first aid, it's when you're doing your exam, and it's when you're doing your PI to give you, and I could, again, as you know, I have quite serious concerns about PI as well, is it's those practical things that you need to be in a classroom where you've done the preparatory work, and then you go in and you get that little bit of practical. You've done the theory, so you now get like a driving test. You know what the signs are, don't you? You have to, what would happen if this, but then you go on a road and do it for an hour. But that's it. Would you not think that would be a better way, or a way of going about it, or at least worthy of discussion?
Let's say it's worthy of discussion, but during COVID, that did happen.
Yeah,
didn't it? It did happen. So it goes to show it can easily be done online without doing what you need to do. But at the end of the day, you need to be in a classroom to do your PI, do your radio work, understand your statement writing. All this stuff needs to be hands-on. Your first aid qualification, it needs to be hands-on. You need someone. We could sit here and I could teach you, or you could teach me to do a door supervisor course or a security course online. Easy as 1, 2, 3. Yeah. But the fact is, unless you've got someone out there like myself, I mean, with my students, I show them body-worn camera footage of stuff, what goes on. I show them things, what goes on over there. Yes, you can do that all online, but you haven't got the person who's out on the ground who can really get involved, help you answer questions, it becomes very sterile.
It is a sterile environment, but it is a sterile environment if all you're doing is stood there or sat there watching a PowerPoint demonstration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's no good, because you resent that. You know, the range of candidate that you will get on a course is immense. There will be those that are barely touching level 2, and those that are university thing, and they're sat there bored out of their minds.
Absolutely.
You know, it's crackers. But I do want to I just want to sort of touch on it now with the awarding organizations. I mean, they're responsible for their providers.
Absolutely.
So why aren't they taking more action? Why are they? Because just as we've got the SIA license to practice is a minimum standard, it would appear that the AO are also accepting the minimum standard requirement, and sometimes not even that.
Absolutely.
Or, you know, to deal with it.
Absolutely. And I mean, if we're going to look at it like that, the people who are responsible then is not only the SIA, but it's also the awarding organisations.
I personally, my personal view is that the AO are completely and utterly responsible for the standards that they allow their trainers and their training centres to operate under. It is disgraceful in many instances. That isn't to say, again, there are only a few, and I do get it. They are, you know, training providers are having to operate under, you know, ridiculous things. If it's COVID, we can be trained online. If it's not COVID, then we have to be in the classroom for 20, you know, for 40 hours or whatever. Is it 52 actually now? I think it is.
Yes.
So if you've got to do that, why is it okay for A, but now it's not? And why are the awarding organizations letting people get off, you know, get off with not having the necessary qualification and skill sets to actually do the job properly? What do you? I mean, am I wrong, or, you know?
I can only agree with you. I can only agree with you, because you've hit the nail on the head every time.
Yeah, do you know what I do? And this goes back right back to the bit when I said, you know, things that I actually think the SIA are blamed for, and I don't think it's their fault. But the one thing I do hold them responsible for is they have the choice. It's their choice as to whether or not they license an awarding organization. Nobody else. If they turn around and say any one of these 6 organizations has failed in some way and shouldn't be doing it, or they can withdraw that license from them. You know what'll happen though, of course, don't you?
Go on.
They'll sue them. The very first thing that you'll get is whichever awarding organization gets binned, the others will all be up in arms, crying in the socks, you know, sobbing, and they'll be sued. But that's what the SIA have got to do, in my opinion. The other thing, did you know that? Who would you think naturally would be responsible for the enforcement and monitoring of standards? It's the SIA, obviously, and there's a department for that, and you would think that they would be responsible for it, wouldn't you? That is their job. That's their job title. Yeah. and you've got the ACS.
That's right.
Under, you know, which is thing, and you've got training, and yet the people who are going out are doing quality checks for the ACS, quality checks for the training provider for training. But why isn't enforcement? I don't understand. Surely all these people should be working for in the enforcement side of things. Or again, I wish Ronnie was here, and you know, because I'd love to talk to him about that. That was one of the things I had hoped to speak to him about, but unfortunately, we're not going to get him, Gary. We're not.
Yeah, I thought we wouldn't.
Well, yeah, no, it's quite interesting. You know, it's apparently he can't come because he's not able to do. The legal department are unhappy that he's, you know, he can't be doing streaming interviews, and I get that. I mean, I think Ronnie's been absolutely brilliant. He's been a stalwart. He tries and answers to answer questions, but what made me laugh is yesterday. Was it, what day is it? It's Thursday, isn't it? It's so Tuesday he did an online presentation for the UK Crowd Management Association. Oh, I don't know. It's online.
Is that the same thing as streaming?
I don't know, mate. I don't know. It's clearly different.
I've got no answers there for you. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I will say tongue in cheek, it's the SIA, and maybe they still want to get online with you, Ian. Maybe they didn't want to meet me.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, of course, I should have thought of that, shouldn't I?
Maybe they didn't want to have questions thrown at them which they couldn't have answered. Maybe that's the case.
Yeah, but, well, yeah. It's always possible. But I do want to say, you know, Ronnie's been an absolute star, and he's answered all of my questions that we've spoken at, and it's a real shame because he's quite right when he you know, I think he probably would have talked about monitored recommendation 8, which is business licensing, and that's a subject that I want to do on another day. But I, like him, think that business licensing could provide the breakthrough that we've all been looking for a long time. Could really change the nature of the industry.
We'll save that for next time because I disagree with you on all that.
Yeah, that's all right, mate. That's what it's all about. You're more than welcome to disagree. That's what it's all about. Talking of which, what's your feelings about doing a late night, early morning after show?
Great idea. Let's do it.
Yeah. What, one Saturday morning or Friday, or Saturday or Sunday morning? Which one do you prefer?
Well, let's just do it. You know, we're hardcore. We can do it.
We can do it. And I think the other thing that might be an idea is that we do a roundup, security roundup at the like this, like we've been doing here, just a general chit chat, and see if we can get someone else to chip in and give their tuppence worth, as it were. What
Definitely.
do you reckon?
100%. Great idea.
Well, there you go. I'll let Gary, my mate, who I never forget ever, give his bits. See?
Well, I'm going to say cheerio, as I always do. But on my phone all this week, just your friend who was asking for a trainer who knows their stuff, ping on my number.
Well, why? Why would I do that? The thing I don't do, I live in Leicester. Where do you think they live? They don't live in, where is it you train? Devon?
It doesn't matter.
London? You're all over the place. Right?
No.
But if you want, but yeah, it's always, well, you've got your, what do you call it up there? I'm sure they can find SSMRT.
They certainly can. And
if they want to find it. But the most important thing, I think, to recap, isn't it? Do your due diligence, as Absolutely. We talked about. Try and find a good trainer, somebody who's been in the industry for a long while, and has actually worked in the industry, knows what it is. I'm not overly concerned if they've stopped working 5 years ago and are there, but have they actually ever done the job? Because people don't change, do they?
No.
What I've always noticed over the years is that the faces changed, but the attitudes don't. A drunk is a drunk is a drunk.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's
All right,
it.
mate. Look after yourself. Have a great week. And I think we'll look for about a fortnight's time.
Absolutely, my friend. Definitely.
Yeah, and I'll see you next week for a catch up. What do you want to do? Monday or Tuesday?
Let's go for Tuesday.
Cool. Speak to you later.
Take care, Ian. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye.